On your screen, you can see that I'll be reading from Ecclesiastes chapter 3, beginning in verse 1. There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, and a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time for peace. What do workers gain from their toil? I have seen the burden God has laid on the human race. He has made everything beautiful in its time, and he has also set eternity in the human heart. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. I know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil. This is the gift of God. I know that everything that God does will endure forever. Nothing can be added to it and nothing taken from it. God does it so that people will fear him.
I'll try to keep it brief this morning. I've been saving up for 3 weeks, right? Off the last two. It's good to be here. It's good to be gone. It was good to be on vacation, but it's good to be home. So good to see you. Thank you for blessing us and allowing us to go. I've entitled the lesson, Just God. And I really want to, in fact, I've entitled this afternoon's lesson, Just God. 2 different sermons, the same title. You'll just have to trust me, right? But what I was thinking about for this morning is what really matters in this life. What's most important? And really at the end of all that's to be considered, there's really just God. Anything else that we might pursue in this life just is nothing. The only thing that really matters is God. And without God, there's nothing that we have that has any importance without God. But with God, then things come into focus. And with God, things do have some value. And so there's really just God. We, on vacation, went to Port Isabel. We went shopping. And one of the shops that we went into, I promise you this was me wanting to go in there, not my wife, right? We went to a shop where there was an artisan making chain mail. And his things were really interesting. I told him they weren't the kind of things that I would spend money on, but I really appreciated the craftsmanship, the artisanship that was involved. And he said to me in reply, and his reply kind of made me think, he said something, I don't know if I got the quote exactly right, but he said, all that we can do in this life is to have experiences and leave some proof to those in the future that we were here. And I thought about that idea. I thought about that idea without God. Listen to these words without God in it, and I think it's the way he meant it. All that we can do in this life is to have experiences and leave some proof to those in the future that we were here. He was pointing to some chain mail that he had spent hundreds of hours creating the little loops and interlocking the loops and making something. And that's all that life was. All that there was in this life for him to have some experiences and then to leave something behind that points to, hey, somebody made this chain mail. I thought to myself, where was God in that statement? If all I have in this life is to have some experiences and to leave some evidence that I was here, is that enough? Is that enough to make life what God intended it for? Is that enough to make life worth living? His position had no God. His position had no future. And at its very best, it had very limited value. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with experiencing the wonders of God's creation. I don't think there's anything wrong with leaving some existence of our evidence. I still drive by Dallas and look at buildings that I worked on 30 years ago. It seems hard to believe, but you know, over 30 years ago, I was working downtown Dallas, and some of those buildings are still there, and I take some pride. There's some places I can go to and see evidence that I've left behind that I was here. But I promise you, nobody goes into that 62-story building and walks across that catwalk and looks at those 5 stories of match-grain cherry wood and thinks, man, I wonder who the guy was that hung all that stuff. They don't think about me. I mean, I know that I was there. I know that I helped hang that stuff. I know I was standing on that swinging stage, lifting on this 400 or 500 pound panel and hoping when we put it on the wall that it locked into those clips, right? You got the big suction cup things like glass. Anyway, that's enough of that. But is that enough? To leave some evidence that you were here, is it enough just to see what experiences you have? I think there's more. Now, I experienced lots of shrimp on our trip. Pursued it, ate lots of it. But, you know, the philosophical question, why am I here, fits in this discussion. Is the why I'm here question just to have some experiences? Is it just to leave some evidence of my existence? To tell you the truth, when I look at something that someone else has built or created, I seldom think of who was the creator of that. When I'm looking at chain mail or whatever, I may look at the skill that they use. I may look at those things, but I think nothing of their character. Those works tell me nothing of their character, nothing of their personality, and nothing of their value as a human being. I want us to spend a little time this morning, and I don't know a great way to do it. We're just going to hope it works, right? Turn to the book of Ecclesiastes. I appreciate dual reading this morning. I just want us to scan through Ecclesiastes, stop on some things that I think is significant. He begins with this idea that all is vanity. Sounds a little pessimistic, doesn't it? All right, here's a great news story for you. Everything's vain. There's no value in anything. Is basically okay. Now you've got the story, right? But look at verse 12 of chapter 1. It says, I, the preacher, have been king over Israel and Jerusalem, and I applied my heart to seek and to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given the children of man to be busy with. I've seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and a striving under the wind. Now, or in the wind. Or after the wind. I'll get the wind right here in a minute. Striving after the wind. So let's just go out here. Let's just stop the sermon right now. We'll all go out in the parking lot, and as the wind comes blowing by, we'll try to chase it down and capture it, right? Well, we can't do that. We know we can't do that. But there's something about the pursuits of this life, or a little bit like chasing after that wind, right? I mean, it seems like no matter what you're pursuing, you can't pursue it all. You can't gather it all. Whatever the it is. And that's kind of the context. And so chapter 2, he talks about these ideas. I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure. Enjoy yourself. But behold, this also was vanity. I said of laughter, it is mad, and of pleasure, what use is it? I searched with my heart to cheer my body with wine, my heart still guiding me with wisdom. I want to ask Solomon about that one of these days, right? How do you pursue wine and keep your wisdom? I'll ask him one of these days if God lets me, right? But look down at verse 4. I made great works. I built houses and I planted vineyards for myself. I made myself gardens and parks. He'll say at verse 6, I made myself pools to which water the forest of growing trees. I bought male and female slaves. I had slaves who were born in my house. I also had great possessions of herds and flocks, more than any who had been before me in Jerusalem. I also gathered for myself silver and gold and the treasure of kings and provinces. I got singers, both men and women, and many concubines, the delight of the sons of man. So I became great. And I surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem, and also my wisdom remained with me. And in whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure, For my heart found pleasure in all my toil, and in this was my reward for all my toil. Then I considered all that my hands had done, and the toil I had expended in doing it. And behold, all is vanity, and a striving after the wind, and there's nothing to be gained under the sun. So what he's saying is look, I built all this stuff, I gathered all this stuff, I expended all this energy, I did all these things, and at the end of the day it was really nothing. I think what Solomon is setting us up for is an idea that when we consider that all is in this world, all that we could pursue, what really matters, and the answer is just God. And that's what he's going to get to. Looking at verse 12, so I turned to consider wisdom and madness and folly. For what can the man who does do who comes after the king? Only what has already been done. Then I saw that there is more gain in wisdom than in folly, and there's more gain in light than in darkness. The wise person has his eyes in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. And yet I perceived that the same events happen to all of them. Then I said in my heart, what happens to the fool will happen to me also. So he's saying, look, I turn myself to pursue wisdom. And indeed, wisdom is better than folly, right? It's better to walk around with two eyes in your head, seeing what's coming, than to walk around blind. It's better. But at the end of the day, the same tragedies come to the fool and to the wise man. And he says it's vanity. Verse 18, I hated all my toil in which I toil under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me. And who knows whether he will be wise or a fool. Yet he will be master of all for which I have toiled, or I toiled, and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is vanity. He says, look, I'm going to spend my energy. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to build these things. I'm going to collect for myself goods and pretty things and all those things. And one of these days, I'm going to die and it's going to belong to someone else, and I'll have no control over what they do with it. They can be wise with it, or they can be foolish with it. And I've spent all this time gathering stuff that's going to belong to someone else. He said, verse 21, toward the end, let's just read verse 20 and 21. So I turned about and gave my heart up to despair over all the toil of my labors under the sun, because sometimes a person who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave everything to be enjoyed by someone who did not toil for it. This also is vanity and a great evil. So he comes to a conclusion in verse 24. There's nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat and who can have enjoyment? That's a great question, Solomon. And he says it this way. He's essentially saying that all these things without God are useless. They're worthless. But what matters is just God. And in this life, as I pursue work and toil, and as I gather some things, the only way for me to really enjoy them is to pursue them honestly, pursue them in a way that's righteous, and enjoy them as blessings of God. That's what it's all about. And so we won't read the passage that Doyle read, but there is a time for everything. There's a time for everything under the sun. And he says in verse 9 and following that God has given us some God-given task. He put us on this earth to work. He put Adam in the garden to tend the garden. When he kicked them out of the garden, he gave them weeds to bless their life, right? So man's going to be fighting weeds all of his life. He's going to be earning his living by the sweat of his brow. He's going to be doing all these things. But God's given us something to do that comes from God. So he says, verse 16, moreover, I saw under the sun, and in the place of justice, even there was wickedness, and in the place of righteousness, even there was wickedness. I said in my heart, God will judge the righteous and the wicked. I'm going to save that one, because that's kind of the direction I'm going after lunch. But he's saying here that, look, I look for wisdom and I look for righteousness in in this earth, the places where you ought to find wisdom and you ought to find righteousness, there you will find foolishness and unrighteousness even there. It's all vanity, he says. And so he turns and he tells us in chapter 5, verse 1, guard your steps when you go to the house of God. Draw near to listen is better than to offer the sacrifice of fools, for they do not know what they're doing, that what they're doing is evil. Be not rash with your mouth, nor let your heart be hasty to utter a word before God. For God is in heaven, and you are on earth. Therefore let your words be few. For a dream comes with much busyness, and a fool's voice with many words. When you vow a vow to God, do not delay paying it, for he has no pleasure in fools. Verse 6, let not your mouth lead you into sin, and do not say before the messenger that it was a mistake. Why should God be angry at your voice and destroy the work of your hands? For when dreams increase and words grow many, there is vanity, but God is the one you must fear. We'll spend a lot of time in that because I want to come back to that idea. I want to talk about this morning this idea that there's all kinds of things that we could pursue. We could pursue pleasures. We could pursue the beauty of this creation and seeing all the beauty of the things that are around us. We could pursue tasks. The work of our hands. We could prove to others that we have skills. We could pursue all kinds of things. And at the end of the day, the only thing that really matters is just God. Look at chapter 8, verses 14 and following. There is vanity that takes place on the earth. And there are righteous people to whom it happens according to the deeds of the wicked. And there are wicked people to whom it happens according to the deeds of the righteous. I said this also is vanity. And I commend joy. For man has nothing better under the sun but to eat, drink, and be joyful. For this will go with him in his toil through the days of his life that God has given him under the sun. When I applied to my heart to know wisdom and to see the business that is done on earth, how neither day nor night do one's eyes see sleep, then I saw all the work of God, that man cannot find out the work that is done under the sun. However much man may toil in seeking, he will not find it out. Even though a wise man claims to know, he cannot find it out. So, as you think about the morality of things in this world, as you think about why are certain people in leadership, in world leadership, Romans 13 says there's no government that wasn't established by God. He places kings, he places leaders. As we consider how the very mechanics of our universe work, we could spend our whole life trying to understand what are all the works of God, and at the end of our life, we still would have a whole lot of things that we simply do not understand. And yet pursuing God and trying to understand what it is that He would have us to know are the only things that really matter. He encourages us in chapter 9, verse 8, let your garments be always white. Let not oil be lacking on your head. Enjoy life with a wife whom you love all the days of your vain life that He has given you under the sun, because that is your portion in life, and in your toil at which you toil under the sun. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with your might, for there is no work or thought or knowledge or wisdom in Sheol to which you're going. So, without getting in the great theological idea of what happens to us after we die, and what is the state of the disembodied spirit of man until the day of judgment and all those things, he's saying, look, we've got this life. We've got this one. We got up this morning and we will decide today what we're going to do with today. We're going to do something with it. And the time is clicking. The clock is ticking. One of these days we'll go to get up and there won't be a get up. We'll just be gone. We've got this life to decide, will God be in it? Will this life be about just me or about just God? Chapter 11, cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days. Give a portion to 7 or even to 8, for you know not what disaster may happen on earth. I get the idea he's saying, look, test me. You lay your life out there and you live for me. You be a blessing to me. I promise you, I will be a blessing in return. You give portions to 7 to 8. You find some people to bless in your life. It may not happen today or tomorrow or next week, but I promise you, if you keep investing in people, serving people, God's going to bring that back to you. Hopefully it's in spiritual ways more than in physical ones. Chapter 12, verse 1, remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come and the years draw near, of which you will say, I have no pleasure in them, before the sun and the light of the moon and the stars are darkened and the clouds return after the rain, in the day when the keepers of the house tremble and the strong men are bent and the grinders cease because they are few and those who look through the windows are dimmed and the doors on the streets are shut. And when the sound of the grinding is low, and one rises up at the sound of a bird, and all the daughters of song are brought low, and they are afraid of what is high, and terrors are in the way. The almond tree blossoms, the grasshopper drags itself along, and desire fails, because man is going to his eternal home, and the mourners go about the streets. Before the silver cord is snapped, or the golden bowl is broken, or the pitcher is shattered at the fountain, or the wheel is broken at the cistern, and the dust returns to the earth as it was, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. All is vanity. Remember the Lord your God in the days of your youth. The days are evil, he's saying. The days keep clicking by. It seems as though the days accelerate. It seems like a day today takes a lot shorter time than it did. I remember when I was 6, 7, 8 years old, and it was summertime. School let out in May, and we weren't going to go back then around September the 1st, right? Back in the old day, that's when we went. And it seemed like every day of the summer took 2 weeks. Every day did. And the summer took 5 lifetimes. I thought school would never come back around. Well, I'll leave that one, right? It's accelerated. Remember the Lord your God in the days of your youth. The days are evil. They're going by. There's going to be a day when there's not a tomorrow. Not on this earth. And so when in my life will it be just God? When will He be my priority? Will it be tomorrow? Will it be next week or next month or next year? And Solomon's saying, use your wisdom. You don't know if you have those. A day is coming when you won't be getting up in the morning. When that cord is severed, when that wheel is broken, when life is over. Was your life just about God? And Solomon closes with these words, last 2 verses of the book. The end of the matter. All has been heard. Fear God and keep His commandments. For this is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment with every secret thing, whether good or evil. As I think about all the things that God gives us in this life, all the things that He gives us that we can enjoy, and I'm thankful for them. God wants us to enjoy this life. There's no doubt about it. But at the center of everything needs to be God. And so as Solomon comes to this, as he comes to his conclusion, when everything's heard, when everything's said, when everything's done, here it is. Fear God. Keep His commandments. We can pursue all that this world has to offer. And in the end, the only thing that matters is just God. I don't know what's going on in your life today. Man, I know that there are all kinds of things that can get between us and God. We can pursue godly things in ungodly ways, and we can pursue ungodly things that distract us from our pursuit of God. And if something has gotten between you and God, we want to pray with you, help you in any way that we can. I want to encourage us to have God at the center of everything we do. He needs to be the reason that we get up in the morning, the reason we think the mountains are beautiful, the reason that we think that food tastes good, the reason that we believe that we're blessed by having a spouse and a family, children, those things all gain their value when God is in your life. And if God is not in your life, if you're not in Christ this morning, I beg with you and plead with you to come to Him. Suddenly, the world doesn't change in the sense of it's a different world, but suddenly the world looks different when you're in Christ. Things have their proper value. The challenges that lay before us are not as ominous as they were without Him. The things of this world don't have the same appeal, though they still have a draw. They don't have the same appeal they did before we came to Christ. We find that there's a reason for us to get up in the morning, and it's more than lining our pockets or our bank accounts or collecting things to fill our homes. It's more than having power or position or those things. That God is in all and through all. That we walk in Him. That He lives through us, and we find purpose in every day. We can enjoy the things of this life, but we understand at the end of the day, all there really is just God. If you're not in Christ, come to Him today. I beg with you and plead with you as we stand and sing this song.